The Halal Travel Podcast.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Halal Travel Podcast. Today we have Umar Munshi, who is currently based in Kuala Lumpur. He is the co-founder of Ethis and also the CEO of Global Sadaqah. Welcome Umar, thanks for coming on board today's episode.
Thank you for coming. Belum. Macam dah habis belum start.
Thanks. So maybe you can share a bit more about the two companies that you run.
Sure. Yeah. So thank you for having me on the show. Glad to be on a show. But yeah, for Ethis and Global Sadaqah, Global Sadaqah is a platform that's part of the bigger brand or the main brand of Ethis. Mm-hmm. And for Ethis, essentially, we are a group of companies that run fintech, specifically crowdfunding, crowd investment platforms. And we focus on, right now, the main region is Southeast Asia. We have licenses and approvals in Malaysia and Indonesia. And we focus on investing and also providing social funds to impactful projects. They're also Shariah-compliant.
Yeah, so perhaps you could share with us a little bit more about the difference between crowdfunding as well as the investment, the crowdfunding investment. I think something along, when we think about crowdfunding, it's usually for like a charitable organizations or charitable causes, right? So what is then the difference between crowdfunding as well as crowdfunding investment?
Sure, I think that's a very good question because there are many terms flying around.
Yeah.
And the meaning of certain terms also can differ based on, like, for example, in Malaysia and Indonesia, the regulators use specific terms for specific activities that are used differently in other countries. So I guess the most, when you talk about the word crowd, the initial term used was crowdsourcing, which includes funding as well as other things, doing things together, contributing effort, contributing items and money. And then crowdfunding became more popular, where it's mostly funds. So the term crowdfunding typically is quite wide, like covers anything that resembles raising funds for a specific cause or company on a platform. So it can be for investment, it can be for charity, it can be to get something, it can be to help a friend. So crowdfunding, I guess, is a more general term that covers or encompasses everybody. But a lot of people had their first interaction with crowdfunding on social focus platform.
Yes, that's true.
Their perception sticks. But today, because of the way technology moves and the model evolving, a more common term that's used now is marketplace financing. So this is where there's a marketplace. Those looking for funds come to the marketplace, and those who want to provide funds also come to the marketplace to match their funds. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I looked at the website, your website for Ethis, I think in the past, I chanced upon it, but then I was a bit confused because, there's the rate of return, there's like funds raised. So because there's the word investment in it, usually when it comes to investing, what we think of is you'll get some form of dividend or you'll get some profit in terms of investing your money. So how does it work for Ethis?
Sure. So we have two types of, when you talk about investment, we have two different platforms with two different activities in two different countries. And we also have Global Sadaqah, which I'll touch on later on when you ask me about it. So for Ethis, the investment platforms, since everybody's interested to invest right now.
Yes.
It's flooding my YouTube ads.
Oh, the Ethis investments?
Basically investments in general.
Personal investment.
Yeah, personal investments, etc.
Yeah. I think it's very important, and there's a lot of interest now, especially in the younger generation. The biggest group of investors we have are millennials. Although those who put in larger amounts are the slightly older age group, but most of the transactions come from the millennial group, which I'm at the tail end of. So anyway, as you were saying, so the main platform we have is Ethis Indonesia, ethis.co/id. Or you can just go to ethis.co, everything is linked from there. For Indonesia, you provide financing. That means businesses with projects or programs or opportunities or contracts, they need some funds, and they know that with those funds, they can complete some work or a project and get paid, and then they can share the profits. So that's what we do in Indonesia. So you can see it's typically quite short term, like two months, 3 months, up till sometimes it goes longer to a year or 2 years. In that period, your funds as an investor is pooled with all the rest in the community to reach that target. Once the target is reached, then the funds are given to the project owner. They do the project, they complete the project, they get paid or they get income and profit, and then they share it with you. So it's basically like project financing, I guess, is the common term. For Malaysia, it's a bit different, and it's, I guess, something people are less familiar with, where you invest to own a share or own shares in private companies. It's like buying stocks, but not of big public companies, or private companies, or startups, of innovative companies, and so on. So for Malaysia, it's like, I guess, a mini public listing where companies come to us, we do the screening and whatnot, we put it on the platform, and then you, the public, can see and check and read and try and understand and decide whether you want to invest. And so that's how we are a marketplace for investment.
I see. Since we're on the topic of like startups or whatever, right? So could you share with us some of the few startups that are already with Ethis, and what do they do?
Sure. I think the bulk of our activity, we've been in Indonesia for 6 years. So most of the activities are there. And most of them are not really startups. They are quite mature companies which get good contracts, good business, impactful business, and then you earn income from there. But for startups, it's something newer because in Malaysia, we got the license. It's called equity crowdfunding. In Indonesia, is financing or lending or P2P crowdfunding. Right? It's two different things. So in Malaysia, we have had a few startups. We funded a delivery kitchen or ghost kitchen. The main is those kind of kitchens.
Cloud kitchen, they call it.
Yes, cloud kitchen, or I don't know why here they chose the term ghost kitchen.
Ghost kitchen. Gaib.
So yeah, they basically they raise some funds with us, a few 100,000 ringgit. There's a few exciting ones coming up. One in the energy space for solar power and so on. Another one in agriculture, food security, helping farmers to buy machinery and equipment, those kind of things. So for startups, a lot have come to us in the past few months, but we're being quite selective in what we put on the platform.
You mentioned that the bulk of your audience are millennials, which is us. So I want to know how much do you need to, if you want to invest in something, let's say you're talking about the Indonesia sort of projects, how large of a sum do you need and how small of a sum do you need to actually participate?
Sure. Well, there are actually two, every platform is different. So for Indonesia, the minimum is typically a little bit or significantly higher than Malaysia because most of the investors come from other countries, are from abroad. And so typically it's the investors who have more funds to invest, who are more interested in cross-border investment, or people from countries like Singapore where there's not much to invest in Singapore because it's so saturated. Then you look for other countries. Like most of our investors are from Singapore. About 50+% come from Singapore right now. The minimum for Indonesia is 10,000 Sing dollars per project, per investment, per transaction. For Malaysia, anyone can invest from any country. The one is 3,000 ringgit. So it's about 1,000 Sing typically.
Okay, so that amount is slightly smaller in Malaysia than in Indonesia.
Yeah, much smaller.
Okay.
We actually did have much smaller minimums in the past. At one point, it was $250. But we realized that a lot of the investors who came in, they maybe were not ready to take this kind of high-risk investments. Yeah, and after some time, it's very clear most of them did not read, did not understand. They just followed their friend or something like that. Right. So the minimum is low. And then later on, they don't know what's going on, and it becomes difficult for us to manage their understanding and expectations. So that's why now we're working with mostly investors who are more serious, typically with a little bit more money.
And at least for Malaysia or Indonesia, these investors coming in, would there be someone like a key account manager or something that actually advises you on which project to invest in and kind of follow up on your portfolio? Or is it very transparent, like you take the initiative to look at which projects that you want to do, everything is on your own and it's very independent?
Yeah. So as a platform, our role is to provide disclosures and also to get to basically to verify and validate the company or the project that wants to raise funds. But we don't do the term typically is due diligence or advisory for investors. Yeah. So as a platform, we collate, we vet, and we curate, and then you make your own decision if you like it, if you want to go for it. And so on, yeah.
Okay.
Internally, we do have quite a robust process to approve projects, but that's more for internal purposes to make sure that we have a certain standard of quality on the platform.
Okay. Very interesting. I wouldn't have known otherwise, because I know like these terms have been floating around for a while, and you really have to do your own research to find out, and there's so much resource online that it still gets very confusing trying to understand, and also trying to figure out which ones are Sharia compliant. It's also not easy. Yeah. So I'm kind of just asking all the questions I want to ask.
Also, like what Rhoda said, like Sharia compliant, that as Muslims, when we want to invest, we think that if something is Sharia compliant, baru kita boleh invest. So like, what is it about investment that makes it non-Sharia compliant, or what makes it Sharia compliant?
Sure. So, I got to give a disclaimer first that I'm not a Sharia scholar.
Okay.
But I mean, the basics are quite straightforward. Essentially, I would say you can put it under two categories. One is the nature of the business or the nature of the transaction, meaning what's the activity, what's the product, what's the company. So anything that has any non-halal elements, those ones would be screened out, right? So anything to do with gambling, creating injustice, pornography, even a very common one is companies that have a lot of non-halal income, typically from interest, right? Because a lot of big companies, they have cash and they stash their cash somewhere to get some interest income. So if that's not halal, then there are certain parameters that we need to look at. So the first one is business activity, and the second one are all these different financial ratios. Do they have a lot of debt with non-halal income? Are they over leveraged? Do they borrow a lot? And do they earn non-halal income, among other things? So when you're investing in a project, typically is a little bit I would say easier, because we are looking at that particular transaction. Okay, I'll give you an example in a short while. Whereas if you look at a company, then you have, because you're buying into the company, then you have to make sure the company is Sharia compliant, right? So there may be, for example, a company that has activities that are halal and activities that are not halal. So you can invest in the activities that are not halal as a financer, right? That are halal as a financer. But you may not want to invest in the company itself because it also has other activities that's not halal. Yeah. So that's a part of our key role, to make sure that everything on the platform is Sharia compliant. We have an internal Sharia advisor, external Sharia advisor, Sharia audits, and so on. Yeah, very interesting. Like I said, I'm not a Sharia scholar, I'm a business person. But a lot of times, a lot of things that we assume are okay, assume are fine, but when you go at it with a Sharia lens, by the experts, then they will find things that you never thought of. Yeah.
Like, for example, do you have an example where that happened?
Yeah, so let's say in startup funding, right? A lot of companies, if you're familiar, at an early stage, they will not fix a value when they bring in an investment. They will say, okay, I need $100,000 to reach this point. I don't know what's my price now because I'm still new. And I don't know what shares to give you now because I don't know what's my value. What we can do is you give me this 100K. In a year's time, if I find another bigger investor, because your money helped me grow, then you get the future valuation at a discount or with a cap. Okay. you follow is a bit complex actually. But yeah, this is called a safe note, simple agreement for future equity.
Yeah.
And it's very common. Any startup that wants to raise money, you Google how to raise money for early stage startup. First thing you see is use a safe note. And the name is very catchy. So simple agreement for future equity. However, when you go at it and you look at it from the Sharia perspective, there's a lot of uncertainty that can create injustice in the end or create problems between the parties. Yeah. So with that uncertainty, then the Sharia scholars believe that it's not suitable. Right? There's also another angle where this person is actually lending you money. So you are taking in the money, you're not giving him anything. Right? Later on, you may give him some shares. Yeah. So then it becomes a loan, and once it becomes a loan, the person giving the loan is not supposed to have direct financial benefit because then it becomes interest. Right? Yeah. So these are quite. I guess this is a deep issue, but it's something that is fresh in my mind because we've been discussing about it the past few months.
Right.
Yeah.
And I hear echo. Okay, so basically, I was wondering, so for companies under Ethis, so are they all to become Sharia compliant? Does it mean that you have to be started by Muslim, or is it all of it has something to do with a Muslim organization, etc., or is it different? Like anyone can invest with Ethis as long as they are Sharia compliant.
Yeah. So for both sides, it can be Muslims or non-Muslims, just like halal food, right?
Yeah.
Or halal travel for that matter. Yeah. So a halal certified or halal endorsed hotel, it can be owned by a non-Muslim and can serve non-Muslims, and of course for Muslims as well. But one thing that we try to support, without excluding other things that are halal, is projects and companies that are focused on the Islamic economy, where it is targeted and it is created in a way that it serves not only the Muslim needs but also the deeper intention and objectives of the Sharia.
Okay.
So now we're going to talk about Global Sadaqah.
Yeah, I was going to. So how does Global Sadaqah differ from Ethis?
Yeah, Global Sadaqah, as the name implies, is focused on non-worldly gain. Right? It's for one-way transaction where you give, you contribute, you donate, you give zakat, you make wakaf, and so on. So you don't, as a crowdfunder, you don't get any worldly commercial benefit in return. Yeah. So it's similar in the sense that both are crowdfunding platforms. Meaning for both, it's not our money, it's not the company's money, it's not Ethis or Global Sadaqah that has the funds, and it's not our projects as well. Right? We are a matchmaker. Yeah. So for Global Sadaqah, what we do is there are a lot of crowdfunding platforms out there already for charity. A lot of good ones as well, a lot of big ones. How we want to differentiate ourselves is by providing more credibility and more transparency for the campaigns that we raise for. So if you want to raise funds for your neighbor, for example, and you come to Global Sadaqah, even though your neighbor may need the money and it's a valid case, we won't be able to take it on. Because we only work with NGOs, organizations, charities.
Right.
So more credible sources.
Yeah, because individuals sometimes, although I'm sure there are a lot of individuals doing great work, but it's very difficult to check and confirm that money is utilized properly and so on. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And for of course, we just ended Ramadan, so Ramadan is a super busy period for Global Sadaqah. And what we saw, which is very quite incredible, I would say, is people putting in, and they may be wealthy people, I don't know, but essentially people putting in larger amounts than ever before compared to the past. And if you donate online, I guess you would assume you donate $10, $20, $50. But this time around, there were individuals donating 20, 50, 100,000 ringgit. And the biggest donor was actually by name a non-Muslim, a Chinese guy. I mean, I don't know whether he's Muslim or not. This gentleman donated about $180,000 throughout Ramadan.
Wow.
ringgit. 180,000 ringgit, which is about $60,000, which is not shabby. It's a big amount. I mean, we don't know who he is. We don't know where he is from. We don't know anything about him. He doesn't know anything about us except what's on the platform. Right?
And do you guys reach out to him?
We probably will. We are sifting through our data now. And the other thing interesting is we are one of the few such platforms that allow crypto donations.
Oh, wow.
Tell us about cryptocurrency.
It's a whole other can of worms.
We have about 2 hours. I can.
It's a huge thing. I mean, I have family members who are into this whole cryptocurrency, and like I think a lot of people, I think maybe in the Malay community where I grew up in, we're still very, very not confident, or rather very, very skeptical about this cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, apa entah lah, all these like different currencies. So tell us more about cryptocurrency. Like, why do you guys even choose to have cryptocurrency in Global Sadaqah?
Sure. To answer your question first, before talking about cryptos, the simple answer is there are people and there are Muslims who hold on to cryptos and they want to donate or give zakah on their cryptos, and they want to do it online directly. So since there are people like that, we should facilitate and serve their need. And as a recipient, on behalf of the beneficiaries of donations, one thing interesting that I want to highlight is for most charitable transactions, you can receive funds that are technically not halal, right? I mean, I'm not saying cryptos are not halal. There are views that it's not halal. There are views that it's halal. And that's why it's going to be a long discussion if we go into that. But as a recipient or beneficiary, you can receive non-halal income.
Yeah, it's sort of like a way to purify your wealth, right?
You know, I've come across actually e-commerce platforms. So you can purchase items. You purchase using crypto, like clothes or whatever.
Wow.
So that's actually one of the sources of funds that we target in Malaysia. There are a lot of Islamic banks and Islamic finance institutions here. So they have to give away some of their income, which is considered tainted or non-halal. So how do they give it away? By giving it to charity.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where we come here to collect this so-called not so clean money. But once it's given for charity, it becomes something that the charity can use. The only sensitivity is maybe if you want to use it for a place of worship or mosque or, then maybe it becomes a bit sensitive. But if it's to help poor people, it's to help relief efforts and so on, inshallah, no problem.
Yeah. So what type of cryptocurrencies do you accept in terms of like for Global Sadaqah? Is it just Bitcoin or is it like Ethereum as well? Or
Yep. We accept the major cryptos. I think 5-6 different cryptos. Yeah. And to touch on your earlier question about cryptos, I think it's not so much about the crypto itself. There's the controversial part from an Islamic perspective. It's more on how people are speculating on it, basically. So, for example, horse riding, horse racing is something that is encouraged in Islam. But today, a lot of the horse racing involves gambling, right? So it's not the horse that's haram. It's the gambling on the horse's activities, right? So it's quite similar, I guess, as an analogy.
Annyeong! Welcome to Jeju, South Korea, the island of beautiful nature, the best beaches, and home to some of the most scenic road trips. Indulge in only the best classic and halal Korean food scene and enjoy the laid-back lifestyle here on this island. Get your legs ready to hike up the Songsan Ilchulbong to see the amazing view of this little town, and maybe say hello to the Henyo, the majestic female divers right by the ocean. And one thing you can never miss on this island is the $1 million sunset at Depo Chisang Jolly Cliff. All of that right here in Jeju, South Korea.
Okay. I mean, you started Ethis first before Global Sadaqah, am I right? And just wondering what suddenly you woke up one day and just realized that this is something that you wanted to do. How did you embark on that journey?
Sure. It actually started when I had a realization about Islamic finance. In a sense, I discovered Islamic finance. That was I think 8 years ago. So I was doing business in Indonesia. I was doing quite well for a period of time. And then the business, basically closed down, right? There were some problems with the supplier and whatnot. And it closed down, and it closed down very suddenly. So I was not prepared for it. And financially, I got into trouble at a quite young age. So in Singapore, I had, cars and so on that were repossessed by the bank. And so I became indebted to all these finances and had to pay, how it works, right? All the different penalties and fees and whatnot. So that's when I realized that something was not right with this system. Last time when I was doing well, all the financial institutions were my friends. And when you're not doing well, then that's where they try to...
They become your Tai Long.
Yeah. So it was quite a significant event in my life. And that's where I started... someone introduced Islamic finance to me. And the initial theory of what I read resonated a lot with me. And I was quite blown away that this is something I did not know. How could I not know something like this as a Muslim, right? I think today, alhamdulillah, the understanding is more, the awareness is more. This was, I think, 8-9 years ago, quite some time back. So then, me and a few friends, we started a company called Amanah Asset Management. And we started doing two things. One was providing education, courses, talks, events that are free and paid to educate people about Islamic finance in Singapore. And the second thing we did was we tried to pull in Islamic finance services and providers from overseas into Singapore. The first one was quite successful. We built a community. And the second one was not successful because nobody set up in Singapore in the end. And then we had this situation where we had a community looking for solutions and services, but there were none available in the market. And so the idea of crowdfunding came about. It was to serve a need in the Singapore Muslim community for halal investment. Yeah. And when we started in 2014, there were no regulations, and in fact, nobody really understood what we were trying to do. So it did take some time for us to, pivot, adjust, and so on until we reached a certain point where we've been given licenses and everything. Yeah. But at that time, it was essentially that, to serve the need of the Muslim community in Singapore for halal investments. Yeah. So that was the original mission. The mission grew. We realized that we were one of the pioneers globally, accidentally. And that the need was very high. And somehow the Islamic finance community globally, a lot of the individuals and organizations became quite excited about what we were doing. We didn't know that we were sort of pushing like a mini revolution of Islamic finance, where these people could see it. We didn't know. We were just doing something to help our own community. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, in many countries, Islamic finance has not managed to reach the masses. It's basically banking, which is mostly serving the wealthier, and large fund managers investing in large companies. So the true Islamic finance is about how we can uplift society, right? So when we started doing this kind of direct financing to projects and companies with impact in a country like Indonesia, the Muslim world, that we managed to reach to online, became quite excited and started supporting us. So that's how we grew. And today the mission is to lead a new wave of Islamic finance, inshallah. That's for humanity.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a struggle, especially when you want to invest as a Muslim, because you're always very skeptical about whatever funds and companies in the market, because most of the time we don't have the time to actually sit down and be like Warren Buffett and go through each one of the company analysis. So I really do see that more companies like yourself are going to pop up and give more options for Muslims as well lah. Like I mean, right now I can see also in the market right now there is a lot of the Shariah-compliant ETF funds as well popping up. Although it's quite new, but it seems like it's getting traction nowadays. And I think it's more about gaining or rather marketing and promoting to Muslims on how to invest and educate them. So I think one of the things that you have done recently was the Back to Basics Islamic Finance recently, right? The 4-part educational webinar. How has it been?
I think the response has been really great. I don't have the numbers now, but there were at least a few hundred people, I believe, per session, or those who signed up. And it was from all around the world. That's the thing that was interesting.
No.
But given that it's Ramadan, a number also said that they couldn't come at that time and so on. But we've shared all the material and recordings. So this is something that we will continue to do.
Like what Nurul say, I think there's a huge interest, I think, in this area. Education, I think, is one of the main key factors. I think there's a lot of people who are interested, but they probably don't know where to start. Maybe what advice would you give to Muslims or people who want to look at this, want to start dabbling in, investing and are afraid to maybe take the first step? And what are some of the things that they should look out for?
Sure. So I think for Muslims who are looking to start their journey to invest, you need to understand, not need, but it'll be good to understand some of the basics of Islamic finance. And I think there are a lot of good webinars, videos, material online that you can easily get access to, including the stuff that we came up with and that we shared. The second thing is to really understand why you're doing it, right? Which also then leads to other things like your risk appetite and so on. But I mean, I'm not supposed to give financial advice, but what I'll say is, as a Muslim, I think the worldview of money and how you spend it is the most fundamental thing, first of all, that you should think about. And that, inshallah, will help you in your investment journey and your decision making, right? So let me give you an example. One of my friends, who's also a shareholder, he's a big fund manager from Europe, Muslim guy. He invests hundreds of millions of dollars for large institutions that are Shariah-compliant funds. But he himself personally, although he's a high-income individual, he does not invest in those same things. Because he says, I have enough salary for myself and my family. Whatever extra money I have, I want to use it to support Muslim entrepreneurs. And that's what he does. He only invests in new initiatives or good entrepreneurs that he sees around him. And he doesn't invest in, stocks and shares, cryptos, bonds, sukuks and all that, because he feels that's not what he wants. Although that's the conventional wisdom of how you should invest, right? And although he's an expert at that kind of investment. Yeah. Right. So for us, especially, those in Singapore, alhamdulillah, we do have people with, good income, good savings. Are you looking to mainly make money and not do haram in the process, right? Then your thinking will be different, right? I want to grow my money and that's my number one priority by far. As long as it's halal, I'll do it, right? Then there are those who I want to put my money where I like, where I believe there will be barakah, which is something you cannot calculate, right? And so you want to put it in helping companies grow, companies that you like, founders that you like, projects that you like, and so on. And that is where crowdfunding comes in. So for those who are looking for returns, mainly they do invest in crowdfunding because the returns are high, but they know that the risk is different from investing in all these different financial products and insurance programs and all that, right? Those are all, in general, quite, I guess you can say, less risky. When you invest in a real company or a real world project, things can go wrong, and things do go wrong sometimes. You may get good profits, or you may even lose your money, right? So for those investors who are savvy and who are thinking of making money mainly, then they'll put and allocate a smaller portion to crowdfunding projects. Yeah, but those who are focused on, I want my money to go to A, B, and C, and in the process, I believe I can make money as well, and I'm not interested in the rest because they don't fulfill any deeper motive except for just being money making. That's something that some people think that way. So when you talk about crypto trading, crypto also called investing, is the same concept that applies, right? Should your money be going into buying some random crypto online or even Bitcoin and have zero impact in the real world? and you make money based on potentially the price going up, which is based on sentiment and nothing else. So if you think you're okay with that, there are scholars who have said it's not haram, so you can do it, right? But if you think it's better that this money you earn with your sweat and hard work goes to something more fulfilling, which has more impact, which has more character in that sense, then that's where crowdfunding can be a good option. Yeah.
So there are plenty of options out there. It just depends on, what is your main motivation for really investing. And I think it's given me a lot of clarity on this. It's a lot of things to think about.
And I think your journey with Islamic finance has also come a long way. I think 8 to 9 years. I think that was it's a pretty long time to I wouldn't say get back on track, but considering you said that your assets were taken away from you, and then you started learning about Islamic finance, etc. I think it's really amazing how you were able to
pick yourself back up.
Yeah.
Despite the circumstances that you were in.
Yeah. So
entrepreneurship is like that.
Yeah.
True.
I don't know how people can have that.
Yeah, because
have the energy to do that.
Yeah, we had another episode with also another entrepreneur, Peter Gold from Gold Studio, and he was also sharing starting a brand and the journey. So how was it for you? I'm sure it was challenging and not easy to start something from scratch. How was it for you? What are some of the challenges that you faced? You ever doubt yourself, second guessed yourself? What sort of advice would you give to budding entrepreneurs who are looking to create something similar?
Sure. So I think first of all, I'm going to say that I believe now is the best time ever for a young person to be an entrepreneur. I'm not that young anymore. I started, my first entrepreneurship stint was when I was in NS, when I was 18, which is 20 years ago. So since then, I've had various different businesses and initiatives that I've tried. At that time, an 18-year-old, a few 18-year-old guys, me and my friends, went around trying to do a business, and nobody took us seriously because you're kids. What are you trying to do? Now, if you're 18-year-old and you have a startup, it's something cool. Right?
Yeah.
Cool alone is not sufficient, right? There needs to be, I think the main thing is you need to have a lot of commitment to your startup. It's a baby, basically. So unless you can build a very good village around the baby, you will need to look after the baby yourself for as long as it takes until the baby can stand on its own feet, or until you have good people, good teams around you that can help to manage the baby. But for as long as it needs to be done, the startup, the founder, needs to have that tenacity to go through whatever challenges. For us, I think one thing that I learned is that when it comes to partnerships, when it comes to joint ventures or even investors coming into your company, because typically you can be a lone founder, but you will still need investors, right? Or typically you're not a lone founder, you have two founders or three founders. I think that's more common. So either way, in the Muslim community, somehow we lack this kind of understanding of how to form partnerships. When I see, I'm just stereotyping, of course, right? Generalizing, right? When I see other communities, they tend to be more savvy on how to set up a fair partnership. For us, sometimes it's like sit down at the kedai kopi or the cafe.
You become a partner lah, gitu ya.
Four of us were there and we talked about it. Let's all four be partners 25%. That is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Because if you don't think through the future with your partners, then when the future comes and not everybody is contributing the same, then it's going to create conflict, right? Which is what we really want to avoid when you do business with others, especially friends. So that's one thing I want to share that I learned along the way. Alhamdulillah, for our own experience, it was a challenge, but we resolved it. We sat down. Of course, you can't make everybody happy, but in the end, everybody accepted of how things should be moving forward. And alhamdulillah, today we are all at peace with each other. The other challenge that we encountered was getting in the wrong investors, people who came in for different agenda or they had different intentions than what we had. So, when you chase money as a startup founder, it's not just money that's important. You need to find money from the right people
Right.
who want to support you in what you want to do. If not, it can even destroy your company if they have a totally different direction or it conflicts with what you want to do.
Yeah, very sound advice. I think anyone who's looking to start up something, I think it's really easy to get kind of
Very excited about the whole entire venture that you forget to sit down to work out the details, right?
Have a direction. And I think even though these sort of challenges and things that you come across are also lessons learned that are unnecessary, I don't think it's meant to be smooth sailing at all when you're starting out something. I think you're meant to have some, you're going to mess it up here and there, but it's okay. What's important is like your vision is clear. What you're doing, your niyyah again is clear. Your intention truly is for the better good of the community, which is what I see is what Ethis and Global Sadaqah is doing for the community.
Yep.
So it's really amazing.
And especially if you have a business or a concept that has a deeper motivation behind it, that is something that can also help to build up the business because you get people to support you in the company and as customers, as clients, based on that mission or vision. Like for us, alhamdulillah, without much advertising or promotion because we never really had a budget, for most of our history, we are just rolling zero, I would say. So alhamdulillah, it grew organically, and so far we've had, for the investment transactions, we've had about 2,000 investments done on the platform from more than 50 countries. And this is new behavior in the Muslim world. I mean, we assume most of them are Muslims based on the names. So it's quite cool that 20 people from 10 countries are investing in an Indonesian project. Without going to Indonesia, without meeting us, without even knowing what Indonesia is like. They have the confidence to invest in companies in Indonesia or Malaysia. So, I mean, there's really new behavior, I believe, in the Muslim world. And although the COVID was a bit of a uncertain period for us, but at the tail end of last year, things started picking up very rapidly. So now we have, high volume on both sides for fundraising and for investment.
That's good. And what's in store? I mean, now that you mentioned that we just finished Ramadan, so that was a very busy period for Global Sadaqah. What are the future plans for Ethis, for Global Sadaqah? Moving forward.
Sure. I mean, for Global Sadaqah, maybe I'll start with that. The key objective is to increase the efficiency, effectiveness of social finance. Islamic social finance, right? Are you aware of how much zakat there is moving around every year? Ballpark figure?
No.
Probably a very large figure.
I think it's pretty large.
It is pretty large. It's quite impossible to get the exact number, of course, but according to the Islamic Development Bank Research Unit, it's typically more than $500 billion.
Wow. Globally.
Every year. Compulsory money that has to go out, right?
And I'm sure it increases every year.
Where's that money going to, and why is the Ummah still so, in such a bad state? This is, to put things in comparison, many, many times more than combined international aid, right? So, why isn't that money making the difference that it should or it could? And so this is where there's a lot of challenges and a lot of problems in the Muslim world. Some of it, human issues, corruption and so on. Some of it system issues, lack of efficiency. So we want to try and solve this in our own way by increasing transparency and accountability on the platform. But that's something that will take a long time and a lot of effort. Inshallah, we can start a ripple effect. But the other thing that we really want to do at Global Sadaqah is to support more innovation and more interesting ideas, initiatives in the Muslim world. For example, even there are some initiatives that came to us on social media experts who want to spread more good about Islam on social media, right? And counter all the algorithms in that sense, or work with all the algorithms. So that's something that can potentially be considered under zakat. Right? But again, it's something a bit sensitive. So another example is doing wakaf, right? Digital wakaf. You do wakaf online for an activity that makes income, and the income goes to charity, right? So it becomes sustainable. So these are, we are not the ones who came up with this. These ideas have always been there, but we want to, implement these ideas in the real world right now because there's a lack of that happening. And for Ethis, essentially, we just need to scale up as quickly as we can because there's good demand on both sides. So it's all up to how fast we can build our team and our capacity and our technology to facilitate it. Because the need today is very big. People need funds. Investors are looking to deploy funds. So inshallah, we can be in the middle of that. And do well.
Inshallah. Are you looking to enter any new markets for Ethis?
Yes, we are working on. We have not really announced it, but we're working on a so-called global license in a particular territory or jurisdiction that will allow us to raise funds if we want to for any country. Right now, for Malaysia, we only can raise for Malaysian companies. For Indonesia, we only can raise for Indonesian companies. So when a Singapore company or Cambodian company comes to us, we can't do anything.
Right.
Right? So now we are looking, inshallah, to have our global platform up and running by the end of this year. And that is, will open up the market for us so that we're not limited by territory.
That's actually a fantastic idea. Yeah. I'm also looking forward to actually all that plans coming to fruition. So how can the listeners find you and find more about Ethis, and if they want to be raising funds, or like whether they want to invest in different projects or be a part of the Global Sadaqah community, where can they find you?
Yeah, you just search for my name or Ethis or Global Sadaqah, and I think our online presence is not too shabby. So Umar Munshi, just search for me on LinkedIn. For Ethis, just search for Ethis on Google. I think the most important thing when somebody asks me in events or podcasts, what should we do? What should people do? I think the most important thing is to take action. Because you can listen to 100 talks like this, but if you don't take action, then after some time you just forget.
True.
Yeah.
So yeah.
After you just shrug like, oh, you caught me.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, so take action, and the easiest way to take action is just go on Global Sadaqah because you can donate $1 or whatever amount you want.
That's good.
Whereas for investment will take a bit more consideration. Yeah, and just join a community by making your first donation on Global Sadaqah.
Yeah, and I think what I like about crowdfunding platform is that you don't have to give 20, you don't have to give 50. If the amount that you can give is $1, you just give $1. Doesn't really matter. I think what matters is the niyat and the effort. Yeah.
In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he did have a very clear hadith. I can't paraphrase the exact hadith. Basically, small, consistent acts are better, are encouraged, basically.
Yeah, correct. All right. Thank you so much, Umar Munshi, for sparing some time for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. Anyways, guys, so don't forget to look out for Global Sadaqah, and then as well for Ethis if you're interested in investing. But for now, thank you for listening to this podcast. Go like and share this video if you haven't. Watch our previous episode if you haven't. But in the meantime, thank you so guys. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you and bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Alright guys, thanks for listening. So we'll see you on the next episode. Don't forget to give us a shout out on anchor.fm/the Halal Travel Podcast. Your voice message could be featured in our next episode.
Yep, and if you have any advertising and collaboration opportunities, contact us at info@halaltrip.com. That's info@halaltrip.com.
Also, don't forget to follow us on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Halal Trip. We're also now on Telegram and TikTok. Until next time, get inspired, go and inspire others.